Hey guys, today I'd like to show you this Gunpla I just completed, the Gusion from Iron-Blooded Orphans. If you're new here, that means we'll take a look at the sub-assemblies as I explain how I painted everything, and then we'll do final assembly on camera followed by some pictures. Let's get the show on the road.
Robo Shop.
So, two quick pictures before we start the live portion of this video. First off, here's the kit in unpainted form, and I'm totally going to embarrass myself by showing you my living room in the background. As you can see, the kit is molded in green and purple, which is why a lot of people think the Gusion looks like a frog, and I wanted to get away from that. Now, years ago I painted this Death Stinger from Kotobukiya in more of a desert color scheme, and I've always loved how this came out. It may or may not actually be the reason why I got so heavily into doing weathered mecha kits these last few years, and it was definitely the first YouTube video I made of a model way back when. At this point I figured it had been long enough for me to go back and basically, plagiarize myself. Now, let's take a look at the Gusion. Alright, so here's what I did. The first step obviously was to do the base paints. Which were basically that I primed the whole thing white except for the dark brown parts, and then the paint that I used on the sort of tan colored parts is Tamiya Desert Yellow, which is an old favorite of mine, to be honest. I also used this on a Death Stinger build that I may or may not still show in this video. So I primed this white, pre-shaded it with brown or red brown. I'm actually not sure anymore. You can still see some of the pre-shading sort of poking through here around some of the panel lines and the edges. And then I painted over it with desert yellow. All of the dark brown parts, like the inside of the waist unit here, for example, or these head pieces. This is basically just all the parts that were purple on the kit. I painted with a mix of red, brown, and black to give me this sort of dirty, dark brown color. And for the pieces that were dark green, like this, or this little hatch here on the back, and a small few other things like the hand armor, I think I just mixed some brown into the desert yellow. I'm actually not sure how I did that anymore. And also all of the inner frame parts, like this hip joint here, or the hands, are gunmetal. With hindsight, I would say I should have probably used more gunmetal on those purple parts that are basically just inner frame, because this kit is actually kind of a weird mix of parts that are purple but really are mechanics on the inside, and parts that are actually gunmetal colored or gray, because they're part of the Iron-Blooded Orphans inner frame. With hindsight, I would do that differently now, but it looks okay. Then what I did was all of the dark brown parts that are sort of mechanics like this. I did my usual shtick of dry brushing. You can also see it here. Dry brushing with Tamiya Chrome Silver and Gunze Rust. And I think I pretty much left it at that. That's just to give it that sort of really beaten up metal look. And then all of the armor parts, like here, for example. First I did a pin wash, which I have to, before I explain how I did that, I should probably admit that sort of all of the oil paint techniques that I used are taken from the Millennium Falcon build series on the Model Making Guru channel, which is also where I learned pretty much everything else I know about weathering. So you should really be watching this guy's channel instead of mine. But anyway, I digress. Actually meant to say, before I started the oil paint stuff, I did a lot of chipping, which you can see here and here along the edges, with first, to indicate sort of the chips that have only gone down to the primer, I used Gorthor Brown from Citadel, and then, as sort of per usual, Tamiya Chrome Silver on the light parts, and no, I mean Tamiya Gunmetal on the light parts and Tamiya Chrome Silver on the dark parts. That's what I did. That was the chipping. I also have to say, in some places, like here on the back of this leg, for example, I kind of overdid it. Now it sort of reads as where you can't really tell whether it's staining or chipping anymore, so it's not a huge deal. But the problem I had basically was that I was a little out of practice, and what I learned or basically remembered from this is that you should always take it easy with the first weathering steps, because there's a tendency, like when you're just starting the weathering, that you feel like it has to be everywhere and everything has to be weathered. But you're going to do a lot of other things, because the biggest trick with weathering really is to apply a lot of different techniques on top of one another and not just one thing. So keep the chipping to where it would logically occur, and wait for the other techniques to mess up the rest of the areas that you feel like need messing up. So anyway, after the chipping, I just let that dry and I didn't bother with another top coat. It's really not necessary, because oil paints and acrylics don't react with each other. And first I did a pin wash, not a pin wash, a dot filter with a whole mess of 502 Uptilung paints. There's even some Gundam Blue in here, which I really just did by putting little dots of oil paint all over everything and then smudging them with a brush that I had dipped in white spirits. And what that gives you, it's most conspicuous here on the top of the head for some reason, if you can see this. It gives you this very mild streaking, which you probably can't see on camera here, which is really like, just looks like a surface that has dirt running over it all the time. And it's very subtle. You only see it when you look closely. But this, along with the pre-shading, is really what gives everything already sort of an uneven look, which is another reason why you shouldn't overdo the chipping, because everything is going to look much more uneven than you think anyway. What the pin wash also did is that it filled in a lot of the panel lines, which actually ended up meaning that I didn't do a panel line wash in the end, because almost everything was filled in anyway. In some places, I actually intentionally sort of pushed the oil paint into the panel lines and just left it there. Then after the the dot filter, I just let that dry for 2 days, and again, no top coat on top of that. And I did the streaking, like here and here. No, wait, that's dry brushing. Here's a streak. Of course, here on the front, you can see a lot of vertical streaks, which again, totally stealing a technique from the Model Making Guru channel. Basically, what you do is you brush thinner all over the area that you want to streak. You have to do this very carefully, because Bondi plastic does not like white spirits. You want your brush to be damp, not wet. And then basically you paint on the streak with very little oil paint. Oil paint is super, super pigmented, so you only need a tiny little bit. And then I essentially dry brushed over it to give it sort of this feathered look, like what you have here. Or here on the back skirt, this is really sort of, in terms of the streaking, this is actually kind of my favorite part of the model now. I also actually got the chipping right here. I also forgot to mention, by the way, when I was done with the chipping, I did the chipping with a sponge, right? And then when I was done with the sponge chipping, I actually went in with a detail brush and connected some of the chips just to sort of make it look like it made a little more sense. Which is another thing to keep in mind when you're starting with the sponge chipping. You're going to go back and add brushed on chips to help tie things together, so don't overdo it. Yeah, anyway, I'm making a total mess of this narrative. After the streaking, I let that dry for 48 hours again, and then the last couple of things I did was, first of all, using exclusively 502 Uptilung Starship filth. I did all of this sort of streaking and soot staining around all of these vents, and here on the front, and especially also on the legs where the thrusters are. I did all of that by basically just dry brushing that on. And then finally, I did these impact marks from where weapons would have hit it, by basically putting on little dots and then smudging them around mostly with a Q-tip actually. I also used the Q-tip in some cases with the streaking, and also to sort of clean up the dot filter where it sort of gathered too much. I'm really finding that like Q-tips are a very useful tool for these kinds of techniques. Yeah, and the last thing I did was that I put some pigments here from a Tamiya Weathering Master set on the feet and also on the bottom of the legs, which here really I find like very nicely sort of mixes with the streaking and the chipping and the pigments. It just looks super dirty, and I love that. Yeah, and that was it. I let that all dry. I did a top coat, another matte varnish with Tamiya Flat Clear, and I was done. Last thing I forgot to mention here is this is the eyepiece. This basically just has a candy coat paint job on top of it. First with Vallejo gloss black primer. Then I think I used silver, I'm not sure anymore, just whatever is reflective, right? And then I finished that up with Tamiya clear red and a really heavy gloss coat. Also because I wanted to protect this piece, because I'm not sure if the paint is going to stay on when I assemble this. Which brings me to the next part of this little session here, which is final assembly. And we're going to do that now. And it starts with the head. And I hope I'm not going to screw this up. This piece, I just checked the instructions again. This piece goes in here like this. Like so. And I have to be careful because this is A, never coming back out, and B, I don't want to scrape the paint off. Okay, that was terrifying. It was really, really hard to get this to the front because there's so much paint on the eyepiece, but I did get it in and I got the effect I wanted, which is nice, reflective, glowy eyes peeking out of this, very matte and very beat up armor piece. So that's good. Now, the next thing that happens is that this goes on here somehow or other. This is also going to be a problem because I need the, oh no, look, that's fine. Okay, that worked fine. On these poke all the way out, that's good. I was a bit worried about seeing the inside of these tunnels that these little, whatever they are, poke out through. Now here you can see, this is the bottom of the head. And you can see here that I actually scraped off these pegs because I already knew when I assembled this dry before painting, I knew like these are, I mean, no, actually I assembled it without modifying the pegs, and then I almost couldn't get them apart anymore. And it was pretty clear that that was going to be a massive problem once the paint is on. And that worked. Enough paint on it to make it stick together. And we have an head. Now, what are we going to do next? Let's take the skirts. Another thing I should probably point out is if you look here, you can actually see some unpainted parts of the armor. This is just primer. I didn't think I would need to paint this because I forgot which parts are visible and which aren't, and I ended up just making it really dirty, which looks fine now, but you can also see here, I just recommend if you are going to build a Gusion, whatever it's called, yourself, then paint everything all around. Just paint everything all around. There's a lot of insides that will end up showing and it's going to piss you off. All right, anyway, while I'm talking about this, I got this foot in. The joint still works, that's good. And also you can see now lots of pigments on here, less pigment on the leg armor. Looks exactly like what I wanted. Very nice. I'll get this foot on. Okay, joint still works just fine and dandy. That's great. Straighten these out so that we can, actually no, I'm going to put the front skirts on first. They just plug in like this. I just took them off so that I could do the chipping. Here we go. Let's pivot them up a bit. Get this leg on. Like so. Preferably without scratching the paint on the side. This one on here. And that's the waist unit complete. Stands up pretty well now as well. The Gusion is of course a little wiggly, but all the paint that's on it now is kind of helping everything stick together. Now, I am not going to put the hands on just yet because as I'm filming this, I have actually not finished painting the weapon, the hammer, which is the only weapon I'm going to use because I don't like the gun. And so I still need to do that. And of course, once that's in the hand, those hands are never coming apart again. So I need to wait until the hammer's finished. For you, this is going to be like about in 2 minutes in this video, but for me, it's going to be tomorrow, hopefully. All right, let's get this head on, like here. There we go. Is that supposed to be this high up? I think so. Oh, that's the neck joint. Let's go like this. And now the upper torso. Okay, there we go. This guy's finished. Let's get a quick look at him here. Obviously, there's going to be a picture gallery in this video. But yeah, here's the Gusion minus the hands. As per usual, I'm at the moment in the build now where I'm just really happy with what I've come up with. So sorry if I gush a little, but that worked out rather nicely. Up next, I will show you the hammer, and then I will decide on a pose, and we're going to check out some pictures of this guy. All right, quick look at the hammer then. There's not that much to talk about here. This is the hammer that comes with the kit. I originally had this idea that I was going to replace the handle with the handle from the axe that is meant to be used with the rebake version, but I eventually abandoned that. So what I did here is that I first primed all of this with Vallejo's Gloss Black Primer. Then I painted over the whole thing with gunmetal, also from the Vallejo metal color range. Then I masked off this part and this and these parts here on the sides and sprayed them with duraluminum. This did not go that well. I'm really bad at masking, so don't look at this too closely. And then I just dry brushed all over the gunmetal sections with Tamiya Chrome Silver and Gunze Rust. Very unusual, I know, never done that before. I dry brushed the edges of the duraluminum parts with Necron compound from Citadel. And then I made these scorch marks here on the sides with Starship filth. Basically what I was going for is that I wanted it to look like, first of all, these parts, which are the sections of the hammer that he would actually hit things with, are largely undamaged because they're made of some sort of indestructible material with which to smash things. And then that it would look here like, you know, like he had hit things and caused small explosions, basically. Worked very well on this side. I'm a bit less happy with this side. Anyway, the way I made these scorch marks, in case you can't tell, is I drew a curve here with a brush and some Starship filth, not too much, and then without thinner or anything else, I just sort of dry brushed it outwards to give this sort of explodey effect here. Since the surface of the metal color paints is very slick because of the gloss primer that's underneath, I didn't need thinner or anything else. It almost came right back off just using the brush, so that worked fine. Yeah, and then the whole thing got a matte coat, which now results in this sort of semi-gloss sheen. Actually, it looks more like that than it does like it's actually been matte coated. I'd probably have to go over it several more times to actually get a matte finish, but I quite like this sort of half reflective effect that I'm getting here, especially since the duraluminum has actually come out shinier than the gunmetal, so that's pretty much exactly what I would have wanted anyway. yeah, and that's the hammer. The last thing that remains for me to do now is to try out some poses with the completed kit, and then we'll check out some pictures. Well, and now I've talked so much about this build that I don't know what to say anymore. Overall, I think I'm definitely very happy with how the weathering turned out, other than the problems with the chipping that I talked about earlier. The dot filter and the streaking worked out really well, and I'm going to use both those techniques again for sure. I kinda wish I'd gone with a slightly less monochromatic color scheme though. Just something in there as an accent to spice things up a bit. You guys know how I like to slap orange stripes on everything, and well, I kinda feel like here you can see why. Not that orange would have worked, but this just really needs another color, I think. I also like how the eyes turned out. As you can see here, they don't really catch the light from most angles, but when they do, it's pretty striking. There's also a bunch of other stuff here and there, like the seam line on the hammer that I forgot to deal with for some reason, the fact that I got lazy and didn't paint the insides of a lot of things, and some other stuff, but you know how it is. Once you're done with a build, you're always looking at it and thinking you need to throw it away and start over. Lessons learned for next time and all that. Well, and that's it for this one, folks. I don't know what's next around here because I'm working on a Machining Krieger contest build, and I don't think there's going to be any Zoid stuff for me to review until February, so we'll see. The big news, of course, is that I just crossed the magical line of 1,000 subscriptions, so I'd just like to say thanks so much to everyone who subscribed. Back when I was chucking Splinter Cell gameplay videos on this channel, I really thought it'd be awesome if I could get even, like, I don't know, 100 subscribers, and now here we are. YouTube's still not letting me do mobile streams for some reason, but if anyone has any ideas for what I could do in celebration, I'm all ears, so let me know. And if you made it this far and you're not a subscriber yet, you're probably one of those people who only subscribe to channels that have at least 1,000 subscribers, right? Well, you know what to do. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.